Welcome to Talk with the Mayor. It's very nice to be back with you on Monday, and after, I'm sure, for you, a very busy day, and for me, a very eventful day also. If you happen to watch, was it Twitter or YouTube, or that had that broadcast my questioning by the DC bar, which I will not comment on until it's over. And maybe then I won't or will, or I don't know how much should be said about it. You know, I have very, very strong feelings about it, and about the FBI taking my iCloud 3 years ago, from the time that I began representing Donald Trump. Why they were interested in only from that day, you can ask them. They're never telling me about it, and then coming to my house and searching my house and strangely, my law office. Then putting out a report after the election that I was cleared and that there was no evidence, any probable cause that I committed a crime. Being sued by every enemy of Donald Trump imaginable. Some of them have been dismissed, but you're never told about those. For example, there was a lawsuit brought by a number of the January 6th prevaricators against me that I somehow was involved in January 6th, and the judge dismissed me from that case. That happened about 3-4 months ago. Not sure you know that. And so was Donald Jr., by the way. Probably don't know that either. And the judge found that the things attributed to us, the statements, whatever, would not have had a tendency to create, however you want to describe, a January 6th. And also, you should know I had nothing to do with the planning of it. In fact, I turned over with several colleagues of mine information that we had gathered to the FBI on January 6th, because it is a much more complicated picture than has been presented to you. The January 6th committee is an abomination. The January 6th committee, first of all, is not a legitimate House committee. It's made up of just one party in the House. Soon, former Speaker Pelosi turned down the Republicans that were recommended by the minority leader. She took 2 rogue Republicans who had no authorization of the Republican Party. A committee like that does not have subpoena power. They exercised it anyway. The people on it, I mean, I can't imagine those of you who are more discerning don't realize it's the same cast of soap opera characters that are on every. I mean, they've been on since Russian collusion. These are the Russian collusion liars who turned into the Ukrainian phony story liars, into the Russian agent liars that I and my lawyer and Senator Johnson and Senator Grassley. There was no real laptop. It was Russian collusion, Russian agents, Russian disinformation. The January 6th people who were bringing you January 6th were involved in that set of lies as well. And I'm missing 3 or 4 other lies that they're involved in. Why anybody would believe them at this point and not realize at least that they're involved in gross exaggerations. I mean, the exaggerations came out almost immediately. 4 people died 4 people were killed by the protesters. Well, nobody was killed by the protesters. It would have been hard for the protesters to do it. They didn't even have guns. Did the police kill somebody? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it could turn out to be more than one, by the way. But that's what you've got going on now. I mean, it's all twisted around. You spend a day answering questions that's like from Alice in Wonderland. I've done the job of being a lawyer for 50 years. I've never had a single complaint against me, ever. The case they're looking at, the judge had the opportunity to sanction me, didn't. My adversaries had the opportunity to sanction me, didn't. It happens. Usually happens when a lawyer does something wrong. All of a sudden, from the outside, people with strong political views who have no connection to the case decide to get deeply involved in it. And believe me, I've got support for everything that I said is based on something that was said to me, given to me, supported in some cases by 20 or 30 witnesses, in some cases by one or two. But in each case, I understand Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. I actually argued and won a seminal case on Rule 11 in 1977 or 78 that helped to amend it and make it tighter. And I always try to make sure that when I say something, I have a basis for it. And there are plenty of things there that I didn't say that I could have if I had stretched it out, but I didn't. But they want to stretch me out. And you know why. I don't complain about it much. I just think it's important to point this out because I'm very afraid for my profession. I'm very afraid because had something like this happened to me or to my colleagues who have all been pursued in one way or another, Professor Eastman and Jenna Ellis, and it had been the liberals who would have defended us more than the conservatives. I respected that about them. They'd have been the ones that would have come to our aid, like they came to the aid of the people who defended the draft evaders and the people who defended terrorists and the people who defended Nazis and the lawyers who defended unpopular causes are often met with very, very exaggerated attacks. And it used to be, many conservatives defended them also, but it was one of the really admirable things about the classic American liberal, that they would come to the aid of people who disagreed with them. Maybe even more than people who agreed with them because they didn't need it. If you're saying what the media loves, you don't need any help. But if you go against their narrative, you sure need plenty of help now. And just think now, recently, how often their narrative has been wrong and how the word disinformation, as used by the Biden administration and the media, is almost a signal for their fake news. But what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, well, a couple of years ago, if I sat here and told you that Russian collusion was absolutely wrong and it was a creation of the Democrat Party, I'd have been accused of disinformation. I'd have been accused of being a liar. Groups of lawyers would get together and write letters about me. But it turns out that they were lying and I was telling the truth. So who was engaging in the disinformation? The government was, or the establishment, the legacy media, the big corporations, the social media, and the out of control Democrats. They were the ones who were lying about Russian collusion. When they would say about those defending Donald Trump that when we were saying there was no collusion, we were spreading disinformation. Well, very similar now. I guess we have it more relevant to the news of today, the hard drive. It wasn't just, a year and a half ago that when I did say the hard drive was legitimate, I was accused of spreading Russian, not even disinformation. I was accused of spreading Russian disinformation. Oh, by Shifty Schiff, who's the one who's trying to sell you January 6th, right? Or by Pelosi, right? Or by every one of the major newspapers, or by 51 of our top intelligence officials for the last 20 to 30 years. Want a quick snapshot of why our intelligence has been so bad? You can see what kind of integrity these people have and intellectual honesty. But it turns out, now let's just calmly examine this. Even those of you who might disagree with me, I was telling the absolute truth about the hard drive, wasn't I? Absolute 100% truth. Not just about the hard drive and the computer, but as the stories come out, these stories corroborate what I was saying 3 years ago. And I didn't just say it, I put it on tape. You can go back to my podcast if you want at rudygiulianics.com, and you can go get out the interview with Shokin, or you can get out the interview with Lutsenko, or the interview with the Russian, with the Ukrainian prosecutors, the actual line prosecutors in the case, and you can see what they were telling me about Biden's vast, massive bribery scheme. And you can see that now those people who were castigating me, attacking me, and trying to destroy my life and my career and my ability to make a living, which they've done a pretty good job with by getting me suspended from the bar, they were lying.
Thanks for joining us. The fastest hour on the internet. America's Mayor, live with America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani.
He's so cute.
And
Oh, stop.
And Mayor, of course, people can go and listen to some of your early podcasts. You've been talking.
I really wish you would, because I think that more than anything else, I prize my reputation as a lawyer, and they've hurt me very deeply. I don't mind saying that, by attacking me. I'm 50 years of practicing law, never a single complaint ever. And my word is my bond. And I've never had a complaint, even a minor complaint. Believe me, I've handled some of the toughest litigation anybody's ever handled against some of the worst people in the world, including Nazis, organized criminals, terrorists.
Corrupt politicians.
Oh, lots of corrupt politicians. Ooh.
So, Mayor, if we can, we have a lot of people have been talking about this, even folks that may not have even knew these details over 2 years ago, right? So for our audience here, a lot of questions are coming out, a lot of questions specifically in regards to the laptop. So can we walk people through?
Sure. I mean, I don't mind going over it again, because look, here's the burden that we face. And by we, I mean myself and those of us who are now in the business of being what would you describe us as? Kind of like resistance reporters, or we're part of the resistance to the socialist communist-like takeover of our government, and we're a resistance to for sure the censorship. Even if you kind of resist the communist part right now, you won't eventually when you study it more. Read Marx, watch what they're doing, find out who taught them. But let's say you resist that for a bit. You can't resist the fact that the censorship is shocking, right? Look at what's coming out with the history of Twitter. Look at the fact that the government's in bed with them. They were Twitter and Facebook meeting with them twice a week with the government. Them saying things like, have we taken care of the agenda for Biden? Yeah, it's handled. Look, I knew this 3-4 years ago. It's not. This is not a surprise at all. It's a horrible disappointment, because they're taking away one of the most important of the two rights that we have. I mean, the most important right to worship as we see fit, and to speak freely, to speak openly, have a right of free speech. That's what makes us America. We don't have that right now. We don't have that without a terrible price being paid. Not necessarily imprisonment, although it could be that too. I mean, they did try to put me in prison. They did succeed in taking away the profession that I love. That one is based on my being a danger. Now, I don't know. Does anybody really think I'm a danger? I've been saying these things for a long time. Nobody's done anything, thank God, based on it. And the one thing that they tried to push on me, an Obama judge said it wasn't so. But you can't get anybody to listen to it. They just have their own hatred.
So let's start. And there's so much more even before this point. But let's start with the laptop.
Sure. What would you like to know?
Let's start, Mayor. When did you first come in possession of the laptop? Set the scene for us. What were you doing? You were probably focused on obviously something else. And then what? Someone knocks on your door?
No.
The laptop?
No. Well, I was focused on representing President Trump. I was his lawyer at the time that I received it. I was also doing what I could, even though I was his lawyer, to help him with the campaign of 2020. I wasn't as active as I was in 2016, because in 2016 I wasn't his personal lawyer. And that sort of took up a lot of my time, given the unseemly and horrible pursuit of the Pelosi's, and you can't imagine how unethical and how driven and what liars they are, and the hold they have on the press, which is maybe even more horrible. So I was in Washington most of the time then because of my representation, or traveling on his behalf, trying to gather evidence and put together a defense because it never stopped. They went through one impeachment and it almost automatically started a second one. I'm sure you maybe you've forgotten it because people forget things like that. It was such a horrible part of our history. But I received a call from my lawyer and close friend for many years, Robert Costello, and Bob told me that he had for a couple of days, if not a week now, been working with and felt it was the time to bring it to me. This guy who has, he might have come right out and said it on the phone or said he has startling information that at first you're probably not going to believe.
When was this time period? October, or are we talking?
That probably September. This was September of 2020.
Okay.
Now, here's the interesting part that Miranda Devine and John Solomon have put this together before I did. This is about the time the FBI goes and visits Twitter and tells Twitter there's going to be something breaking about Hunter Biden. Now, this would be the time that I was talking to Bob Costello about it, and also beginning my discussions with Miranda for the Post, and also I always discuss things with John Solomon because John was one of the few people that was onto this case, like back when I first was on it. In fact, he maybe was the only other one, so I could talk to him about anything. So we were having conversations, and they had my iCloud. They had Bob Costello's iCloud. I don't know if they had Miranda and John's, but they certainly had ours. So they could have picked up that we were talking about something having to do with Hunter Biden, and maybe they could have pretty easily figured out it was the hard drive since they had it. At the point that they first picked this up, they knew more about it than I did because they had it for over a year. Not only that, they had me come in and spend 4 or 5 hours debriefing them on everything about Joe Biden, and Barr did, without telling me they had it. I gave them everything I had, and they did nothing with it, by the way. They left a woman threatened with death high and dry in January of 2020, who was willing to turn over, claimed that she was able to point out the offshore bank accounts of the Biden crime family, as well as several other crime families. And I don't know if she was telling the truth or not. I do know she had, as they like to say, the indicia of telling the truth. She was in a position to know that. She had a very, very strong motive against Zlochevsky to do it. She should fear Zlochevsky because when Zlochevsky left government, having stolen all of this property, he had a partner who was running Burisma, and within a few short weeks or months, he had no partner any longer. The guy kind of like crashed himself into a tree and died. Just so happens Zlochevsky then took over the entire $40 billion business. Didn't have to cut it in half anymore. What do you think? What do you think the odds are that the organized crime, Russian-leaning Ukrainian oligarch who stole $40 million as a corporation and $8 million personally in his pocket, what do you think maybe he had something to do with that? He sure has a reputation as one of the most corrupt men in Ukraine, and that is corrupt with very large letters. The minute you find out that Hunter Biden is working for him, if you are an intelligent person, you have it all figured out. You don't even need Joe confessing to it on tape. If you had told me back then that he was getting $1 or $2 million a year from my Hunter, I said they're bribing Joe. What, am I stupid?
And so Hunter Biden.
Now you got all the proof. You can put it all. You got about 80 pieces of proof that will convict them in 3 minutes in front of any jury. It's all there
saying, Mayor,
in black and white.
So basically, what you're saying is there's no question why these people are giving money to Hunter Biden. What you're saying is that
they're not paying for his rehabilitation. I'll tell you that, because it's not working.
It doesn't take a lot to connect the dots.
Yeah. So let's take Mykola Zlochevsky. Mykola Zlochevsky is a Russian. I'm sorry, he's a Ukrainian oligarch, not just a rich Ukrainian. But when you say oligarch, you're also suggesting a guy that sort of helps to run the government. I mean, Putin sort of changed that in Russia, but Russia was run that way too. I mean, the wealthiest people in Ukraine run the Ukraine. The president is kind of, now Poroshenko, the prior president before Zelensky, dealt with that by becoming the richest person in the Ukraine.
How did he become the richest person?
Stealing it. He would take a piece of every deal. I mean, what I'm telling you is not even.
Hypothetically,
there's nobody in government that's in government that doesn't know what I'm telling you. Poroshenko was the biggest thief in Ukraine, very close to Joe Biden. In fact, hours and hours on the phone. They probably have something in common. And that's the guy that Joe was paid to fix so that Zlochevsky's company wouldn't be taken away from him. That's why the guy coughed up $2 million a year and then side payments to the Biden family, not to pay Hunter Biden, who I'm not sure even went to Ukraine. I don't think the guy could really even abide him, because when he came to Monaco, he had a lot of problems, because he has a lot of problems. And I think we should stop focusing on Hunter. I really do like the way the new members of Congress. This has been for me from the very beginning, when I first could see it as a separate situation from just defending Trump, and that it was a situation involving national security. This is about Joe Biden. Hunter Biden is a player in it. And Hunter Biden is not even the biggest player in it, other than Joe. But this is an investigation of Joe Biden. He's the guy. I mean, the only person who can take a bribe is a public official. He was a public official when he was getting a lot of this money. Now, some of the other can be fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, extortion. You can have those crimes for when he was out of. I heard some brilliant Democrat say, "Oh, he was out of office when he got this money." First of all, that's not true. A lot of the money came when he's vice president, particularly that first 1.5 billion. But second, when he's out of office, you also have some really solid crimes like extortion, money laundering, conspiracy to defraud the United States, things like that. I mean, accessory to crimes committed by his associates, accessories to the crimes that the people paying him money are committing, crimes in foreign nations, whether it be Romania or Kazakhstan, or, gosh, you just think about it. I mean, this whole situation with the war in Ukraine is complicated by the fact that we never fixed that up. Also, well, I got it in September 2020. I got the laptop, the computer, the laptop. Bob talked to me about it. He gave it to me quickly. He had already vetted it, to make sure it was his, to make sure that it was. I did it myself. I used my own people to do it. He had done it already. Then I began speaking to Miranda Devine, who had the courage to go with it. And the post took 5 days, maybe 7, to vet it. to make sure on their own, not just taking my word for it or John Mac Isaac's or even Bob's, which I certainly had no problem with. They should. And I thought once they put it out, that was it. I mean, American people would get the information and then they would decide accordingly. Well, all of a sudden, I've got 51 intelligence agents saying that I'm a Russian operative. Great, huh? But what I did what I'm doing now because I feel this is the only way to get around the iron curtain of censorship. I just kept talking to anybody who would talk to me so I could get it out. People who would talk to me and let me say it because they, from September on, which is when they may have gotten the idea that I was going to get this, Biden had written a very extraordinary letter to the media, his co-conspirators saying, don't put Giuliani on television. I first was confronted with it by George Stephanopoulos. And after that, the stations that used to bang my door down to be on, they all sort of disappeared. And Fox still hung in there for a while, and then they disappeared. But that you just think of the arrogance of writing to the. Imagine if I wrote to the networks and said, "Don't put Nancy Pelosi on because she gives me an upset stomach." I think they would say I was trying to affect the First Amendment or didn't understand First Amendment values. It wasn't very American or. Well, they didn't say anything about Biden to it other than, good job, Joe. Bet you didn't write that letter. Although he did have a lot of time in the basement to think about it, but Joe was never good at writing his own things or even thinking up his own things. He was plagiarizing Neil Kinnock. And most of you don't even know who Neil Kinnock is. Not just his speeches, but his life. Pathological.
So you get the laptop in September 2020. Bob even said, look, you're going to, your initial reaction may be, wow. What was your initial reaction when you get the laptop?
Well, I had help. I worked with Bob. I worked with Steve Bannon. And when we got it out to the Post, I probably in the back of my mind, from the time this all started, the comment that you are referring to, where I said, "Boy, they're going to kill me," that I'm bringing this stuff out on Bannon, actually occurred much earlier. Not on Bannon, on bringing out all this stuff on Biden. It occurred way back in 2018, 2019, when I first heard about his involvement in the bribery scheme. I said to the people who brought it to me, too bad Biden's involved in this. They're going to do everything they can to protect him. I didn't realize they'd go this far, though.
Yeah. And so you give it to Miranda Devine after. I mean, you had already had some folks. You did your own process to verify this at this point?
Oh, 100%, yeah. I mean, this was my third or fourth revelation on. I gave all the information I had originally to Fox and Hannity. I gave it to John Solomon. He had his own. I gave it to Mike Pompeo as part of a outline of an investigation that never went anywhere. Pompeo, State Department, buried it. I gave it to the FBI and the Justice Department at William Barr's request in January of 2020. They buried it. And worse than that, they left a woman hanging out there in Ukraine who was claiming she was under threat of death and wanted to be in the witness protection program.
You gave it. You gave
I gave him everything I had. I went. For example, I went and I sat down with the FBI and U.S. attorney. I didn't have a laptop then. They had it.
Yes, that's what I want to clear up.
These phonies had it.
Let's clarify for our audience.
They knew that everything I was telling them was true, and even more true than if that's a word, than I know.
And these intelligence folks had the laptop for how long before you got your hands on it? In around
a year,
2020.
about a year.
About a year.
Yeah. And when I was sitting there on January 20th of 2020, what was it, January 20th? It was around January 20th of 2020. And I had this big long outline with me and slides that I made and documents that I kept feeding them to show them. Here's the money laundering transaction. Here's the document. Here's the bank record. Here's who we're going. And this is how Prime Bank works. That's Kolomoisky's bank, who happens to be the patron of Zelensky, by the way. Kolomoisky is the
big backer of now President Zelensky of Ukraine.
Made his career. He's the owner of the television station that Zelensky was a star on, and Kolomoisky is the #1 money launderer in Eastern Europe, and runs a bank called Prime Bank. I think it's called Prime Bank, and I was showing them the method that he uses for showing the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office. They didn't need me. They've got about 80 examples of it right in the hard drive.
And at that
now I have it.
At this point in January, you were showing them other information that
they could have shown me information.
And they had the hard drive. You didn't. So
I was telling them that Joe Biden is lying when Joe Biden says he doesn't deal with hunters, foreign clients, because I was getting that as testimony from the foreign clients.
Yes.
They had it corroborated by Hunter in black and white. It's the first thing that set John Mac Isaacs off when he kept hearing Joe Biden lie about it. I don't know about the foreign business. You got to be on that darn thing for about 5 minutes, and you find out that Joe Biden is a complete pathological liar.
When did Bob get the laptop?
A week before me.
Just about a week before you. Okay. Mm-hmm. The FBI already had it from the
John Mac Isaac wrote a letter to me.
The laptop repairman.
He got it from the laptop repairman when the FBI did nothing with it. Much the same way as they did nothing with the briefing I gave them in early 2020. That's why John Mac Isaacs and Bob and I were meant for each other, because Bob came with me to the briefing. He got very, very upset, and he wrote to, I think it was no more than about 3 or 4 people, the only people he said that he felt that he could, that were left that he could trust, which I'm very honored by, that he picked me as one of the people left that he could trust. And I was in Washington, and Bob was picking up my mail, particularly if it looked like it related to anything of a legal nature. And Bob got it. And rather than telling me right away, he was half thinking it's a crank letter. And I get
very public figure. People might be saying.
I get really crazy stuff,
all the time.
And I've learned, however, never to turn it down anymore. You never know. Probably some of the stuff that I turned down 10 years ago. Who knows? 10 years ago, I would have said this was all nuts, just like a lot of people are saying about me.
Bingo. And that's another thing we're really trying to.
I mean, I understand it. I understand it. It's not honest people. Honest people have a hard time with things like framing a president, organizing a coup of the government, calling people Russian spies when there's no connection to Russia, stealing an election. They have a really hard time with this stuff.
So just to close this loop on
covering up a hard drive that incriminates a man who's walking into the highest position in the land.
You get the laptop. Okay. Bob's had it for a week. Now you have it. And you want to obviously do your own. You don't have to go into the methods, but you want to corroborate this on your own, verify it.
I think it's about 3 days to do that.
You do. You've got access to people. You know.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you exactly
how. You're not new to this.
Yeah.
You get that done. Who do you send this to? You mentioned you sent it then to a number of people in the government.
Well, no. I first sat down with Steve and I were working together at the time, and I brought him into it right away. Steve Bannon, to talk about how can we get this out. Let's get this darn thing out. I mean, we're not going to go to the FBI with it. My goodness, they've had it for 2,000 years. They do anything with it. They'd probably accuse us of forging it or have put us in handcuffs. They eventually did arrest him, right? And they raided my house. The house I'm sitting in right now, they raided at 6 a.m. and they took out all my electronics, but 2 things: the 2 hard drives of Hunter Biden. They didn't want them.
You told them that was Hunter.
Well, I guess they had them. They had them. Although there was an agent a while back that told, I think it was Senator Rand Paul, that they couldn't find the computer. He said something stupid, like they couldn't find the computer.
But they lost it.
Yeah, I did a little. I'd be happy to loan mine to them. I mean, if they're really in trouble, I can loan it to them.
So you and Steve are then discussing. You don't have to go through any private communications or something conversations you had in confidence. But I think people want to know how you came to the decision to give it to Miranda Devine, who I believe most people will agree, fantastic reporter.
Because in talking to her and maybe a group of others, she was the only one who didn't faint or smell herself up, or when I told her about it, her hands didn't shake. You know the scene in The Godfather when Michael and the baker come down from putting his father in a safe place, and they're going to act like they have guns. And the baker asks Michael lights a cigarette, and the baker asks Michael if he could have a cigarette, and the baker reaches out for the cigarettes, and his hands are shaking. And in the book, not the movie, because they can't do the internal part, in the book, Michael says he knew he was a killer when he lit the cigarette for Enzo, and his hands weren't shaking, even though people were coming there and could have killed him. Yeah. He just went right ahead and lit it. Enzo was shaking.
Yeah.
All of the other publications, the few others we thought we could trust and talk to, their hands were shaking, and various things were happening to them that I can't repeat on a live cast. So but in Miranda's case, you could just see steel will and the heart of a real journalist.
And so you give it to Miranda. She gets the New York Post publishes some stories.
New York Post put it on the front page. I mean, it's the oldest newspaper in America. It has one of the highest circulations in the country. You figure they put it out there. Even the crooked papers are going to have to do something with it. Yeah, well, they did something with it. They buried it.
So record-breaking numbers. We have a lot of people tuning in. They really wanted to hear the background here on this story. Comment below. Let us know your name and where you're tuning in from, and of course, ask questions. We want
and that Ted, is when we started our resistance movement, which is going around the Iron Curtain and getting the message out. And by the time we got to election time, we got it out to about 50% of the people, which I was quite amazed at. We're over 50% now. We're still not there. There are still people that believe that lying group of whatever they are. I mean, I don't know how often you can be lied to and not say they've got an agenda, and the agenda is not the good of the American people. I mean, they don't even cover the story of Apple really screwing the protesters in China because Cook is all up Mr. Z's you know what.
So we have Star tuning in from Salem, Oregon. Hello, Star. Michael in Indiana. Kyle is in Manitoba. Douglas in Northern Illinois. Justin is saying hello from Washington State.
I'm so glad because this is it's important that you help me get these messages out, because otherwise the American people will not get these messages, and they'll cast the kind of brainwashed vote that was cast, let's say, in New York and Michigan recently for Governor Whitlis and for Governor Hochul.
We know those two states, Mayor. So, again, lots of people coming in here. Here we go. Carlene is in Colorado. She says she's stuck in communist Colorado for now, but says that'll soon change. So that's
another one where you've got a lot of brainwashed people. I mean, there's one of the first places that made marijuana freely available to everyone, and their number of accidents and deaths and young children being killed by automobiles has gone up exponentially. I mean, thank you very much for making marijuana available without any test as to how much would make you incompetent. What effect does it have on your brain? We've got a mayor in my city that wants to turn New York City into a drug and gambling economy. His future for New York is drug and gambling.
So thanks for joining us again. We are over 1,000 people just on YouTube alone live at the same time in our chat room. So please keep these numbers going up. Karen says hello from Central Florida. Chris in New Hampshire. We were just recently in New Hampshire. Bella in California. Carlos from Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't laugh. I mean, that guy's really...
Gavin Newsom.
That guy's really a piece of work, I'll tell you. Wow. Did you notice? I mean, when I was last week, we spent a lot of time on how Apple was working with the Chinese communists to cut off the whatever degree of privacy there is with the Apple phone for the benefit of the Chinese communists, which they don't do anywhere else. Did it ever occur to you all the dictatorial tendencies all those Democrat governors showed during the pandemic? Because it occurred to me immediately. I mean, the minute they started talking lockdown, I got exceedingly nervous. When I hear socialists talk about lockdown, there's something about that that's beginning to complete the circle to communism. And you look at how enthusiastic they were about the lockdown and how much they enjoyed keeping you locked up while they're and their families did anything the hell they wanted. We used to call them limousine liberals. That is you have to follow all these rules, but then we can go around in limousines or fly jet airplanes while we destroy the economy of the farmers.
I like to call them NIMBYs, Mayor. I love that term. Bunch of NIMBYs.
Yeah, I got other names for them too.
So thanks for joining us. A very lively audience. Keep the questions coming in. The mayor loves answering your questions. Of course, you can catch him on WABC Radio by visiting WABCradio.com or listening over the air here in the New York market from 3 to 4 p.m. weekdays. That's on WABC Radio. And, of course, you can catch the mayor on the weekends for Common Sense.
With Dr.
The truth.
With Dr. Maria, who did a great job of substituting for me today.
And you can catch Dr. Maria again tomorrow.
I believe so. Yeah, we have another day of questioning, which will be on YouTube. You can
if we get that
you can listen to how dangerous I am.
All right, folks, and feel free to comment below if you uncover the link. If we get that link, maybe we'll post that on social media and let everyone in on how this process works. We'll leave it at that. So moving on here, the mayor, of course, you can catch him on Newsmax. I believe you have another hit tonight. So right after this.
With Greg Kelly. Is that right?
Yes, we'll be on with Greg Kelly.
Probably doesn't go on until 10, though.
So we're going to tape with Greg. So if you're watching later tonight, the Greg Kelly program, you'll catch the mayor. And of course, weeknights at 8 p.m. right here on the platform you're viewing us on. And you can visit RudyGiulianiCS.com. That's RudyGiulianiCS.com. And check out all of his podcasts, going back to all this stuff about Ukraine and the Bidens. And then, of course, even more recently, just such great material. Check it out. And Mayor, what does the CS stand for again?
Common Sense.
That website. So we're rolling right along here. Just a few minutes to go. Wow, the fastest hour on the internet sure does fly by. Mayor, some questions have come up. One big one was, how long did you have the laptop, and how did you come to the decision to give it to Miranda Devine? And I think we've talked about that, and I think a lot of folks.
Well, there were only a few publications of that magnitude that you could give it to. I surely wasn't going to give it to the publications that had banned me, or television stations that had banned me. I had already seen, with regard to representing Trump, how they could distort everything. Who knows? They would have. They could have taken it, buried it, pretended there were other things on it. It'd be my word against theirs, and I wouldn't have access to the media they did. I mean, you have no idea how corrupt they are. Well, now you probably do, don't you? Don't you? Haven't you figured out how corrupt the Washington Post and the New York Times, and they haven't even covered they haven't even covered the whole recent revelations that Musk put out. It's not news. It's not news.
Here's a little nugget of information for you, Mayor. Did you know
they don't even cover it? It's just like poof.
Did you know Anthony Fauci's daughter worked at Twitter?
Well, nothing would surprise me about that man. Nothing has surprised me since the day that he said, "How could we think that the Chinese would, put their own people at risk because they wouldn't want to kill their own people?" And the Chinese have killed 80 million of their own people. I realized at that point that he was just thoroughgoing liar, yeah, and an apologist for the most homicidal regime in the world, and anybody like that would have to be inconsistent with being a decent doctor. And I think he's done. I think I mean, I haven't had a chance to cover it and focus on it the way Dr. Maria has, or the way Robert Kennedy has, or whatever. But I wouldn't be surprised if the revelations about him just excuse me, the revelations about him just continue.
So just a few minutes left here. Mayor, one question that we're getting here, folks, and this transcends partisan politics, right? Free speech, the fight against censorship, individualism, freedom. This is all transcends partisan politics. However, have you paid attention to the response we're seeing from the Republican Party, leaders of the Republican Party in the last few days? What is your sense on that? Are they being aggressive enough? Do you think maybe we or the party needs to let loose the dogs all the way here? Let's fight back. The tide's turning, but there's a long way to go. Kind of give us your assessment of the Republican Party at large and their response to what's been happening here.
Well, a couple have been positively heroic, right? You can't say enough about Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley. Ted Cruz has been remarkable throughout. On the House side, there are a lot. I mean, of course, Jim Jordan stands out, but there were a lot of Jim Jordans in the House. It's the Senate, really, where we have the gentleman who's going to conduct, Coomer, who's going to conduct the investigation, seems to be really on the ball, and he doesn't seem to be cowed by anything. But I mean, I know a lot of the people in the House, and I don't have, and same thing with McCarthy. I think McCarthy has the agenda straight ahead here. This is not a Paul Ryan.
Okay.
And I'm willing to put my neck out, if you want, with some of the right wingers about that. I'm not worried about the House. I think McCarthy and Jordan and Coomer and all, they're going to do what they say they're going to do. I think they'd have done it if Ryan didn't stop them 4 years ago. We might have cut off a lot of this. The Senate is always what you got to worry about. McConnell's heart isn't in it, obviously. Never has been. He played an awful lot of games. He's played an awful lot of games with the Senate.
Speaking of the Senate, I mean, wouldn't this be a good issue? Not just Twitter, because I get it. Not everybody's on Twitter. But the larger issue here when it comes to big tech and the legacy media, we have a we have a runoff tomorrow in Georgia. Can you imagine if this happened to the Democrat candidate for president? And I'm not blaming Republicans for why this isn't a large, and it is a large deal. It's getting to people. But can you imagine just the noise and how much we would hear about this going into it?
Well, their ability to unite and to remain united around a singular idea is much greater than ours. And I don't know if it's the difference between we're considerably more honest than they are. Almost anybody's considerably more honest than they are. And therefore, honesty creates more complexity. When you're dishonest, you just suck it up. Or if you're a weakling and a coward, let's say, like the ones who just smile when AOC and her crowd attack Israel or attack the United States, it's much easier. I mean, they don't have anybody that stands up, with maybe one or two exceptions, and Tulsi Gabbard was one, and she left. Yeah, I can't imagine some of the others aren't.
Just a few minutes left. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for standing with the mayor through this all. Of course, just another example of the mayor being vindicated. However, of course, none of us are surprised. We've known this from the start. And so, Mayor, we still have about 10 minutes left here tonight. Where do we go from here? What can people do in their someone out there watching us right now in Iowa, Michigan, any of our great 50 states, or even around the
world? Train yourself to be your own resource. You've got to do your own reading. You've got to go beyond the obvious, most popular publications and networks, and it's going to be, on the sides It's going to be on the sides of that Iron Curtain, not the Iron Curtain, where you're going to get the truth from. I'm going to obviously use my broadcast as an example, but I have a lot of colleagues, and you know that, right? I mean, there are a lot of colleagues. Now, we don't all agree on everything, but we all agree on telling you the truth. And you can actually tell us we're the ones that the New York Times hates. Anybody the New York Times hates is probably going to tell you the truth, because they are very worried that Trump and others that are for Trump or maybe aren't even for Trump but share similar ideals and ideas, even not with him, if that's the case, that they're very dangerous to their kingdom. I mean, they've had a kingdom for 20 or 30 years, 40 years. People worry about, their editorials, and oh my goodness, I want to be in favor with them. I don't get invited to the cocktail parties unless I am. And boy, cocktail parties are so much fun.
So really, this isn't really Democrat versus Republican as much as the permanent Washington political class.
Yeah, you look at the 51. You look at the 51 intelligence
the spies who lied.
The 51 who lied. Yeah,
I love that headline, Mayor.
Yeah, they're an example. I mean, they fill out the Washington press conferences, the Sunday morning lying, babbling, talking heads. That group, the group that wants to be part of that, because if you want to be part of that, you have to subscribe to their dogma, their speak. Like Orwell. You've got to be hysterical about the idea of climate change. Everything, our entire economy, including all of our farmers, should be sacrificed for climate change. We should give away anything we have to give countries that don't have enough money for climate change money, so they can spend it on other things like the crooked people who run the countries. If you don't subscribe to all of that, you don't understand that the whole thing about pronouns has become very, very complicated now. And before you do anything, you got to figure out the right pronouns to use. And you better be in favor of men dressed up like women going to ladies' bathrooms. If you're not in favor of that, you're some kind of a horrible, terrible Neanderthal. Or you could also just be a father who worries about his daughter. That could be also, but they won't accept that.
That's right, Mayor. And one thing and I'd love your perspective on this, being someone who's worked in Washington at the highest levels. These people, and I'm generalizing a little bit, but they're not that smart. One thing I thought about the permanent Washington political class coming there, at the very least, these are smart people. These are going to be tough people to work around. They're not intellectually.
Well, if they're not, I don't know about smart. Their obsession and their like I heard someone ask a question the other day. It wasn't of me. It must have been on radio or something. And I said, "Boy, this is what a giveaway this is." It was, "Do you believe in climate change?" Well, I think you were with me when I said, "Well, there's what's happened to their head. Climate change is not a matter of belief. It's not a religious principle. You believe in God or you don't. You don't believe in climate change. You analyze it. You determine how valid is it. Also, if you're a scientist, unlike phonies like I am science Fauci, who's worried about the next royalty payment that he won't tell you where it comes from. Haven't you figured him out when he won't tell you where the royalty payments are coming from? Well, I mean, unlike him, scientists disagree with each other. That's how we get to eventually the few things to become, hard and fast, immutable truths. Even those change over time in science, as they do in law and society. That people disagree with each other and have different points of view is very, very natural, as long as there are certain basic fundamental principles we all agree on. They're pretty simple, like the 10 Commandments. As long as we agree, we're not going to kill each other. That's a pretty good start, huh? We're not going to lie about each other, and we're not going to cheat each other. And then we don't treat We don't have two standards of justice, which we now have and have had for some time. You know, you want to unite this country. You can't do that if you have two standards of justice. If you look at this guy Bankman, I mean, his financial fraud is as bad, if not worse, than Madoff or Milken, and it may very well be he hurt more small people, but he hurt small people so he could give what, 400 or 500 million to the Democrat Party. So
maybe even more, Mayor. And I'll share some more info.
And they're treating him like a poor, unfortunate
sympathy. It's absurd. It's absurd.
No, it isn't absurd. It's the hypocrisy of our time, which is eating us up. It's the hypocrisy of our time, and it's completely eating us up. And if we don't break through it, we're never going to unite.
So to close out, Mayor, maybe give folks some perspective on where we think things may go going into next year with the new House. Some other factors here at play.
You know, there's no way to know because we are guided by a man of unsound mind. And let's just be straight with each other, because now here, nobody in Washington wants to really be straight. Even the reporters who say, oh, we feel sorry for him. And what the hell are you feeling sorry for him for? The guy made millions by selling his office, by selling your office. Nothing to feel sorry about. The guy's one of the biggest thieves in the history of Washington. He's also a miserable father and grandfather. You can respect a guy who leaves his granddaughter out there and doesn't put up a stocking for her at Christmas.
Yeah.
What about just that? I want you just to do a little thinking, New York Times. Think. Got to take you back about 50 years if you thought. How is this kid going to grow up? I mean, you care about poor people. You care about people that are estranged. And well, what about this kid, huh? She's going to know that her father was the president, her grandfather was the president. He didn't want to know her. So what kind of human being is this? He had a kid who was prone to addiction at 18 and 19, and he put him in business with some of the most crooked people in the world. Soshevsky's one of the most crooked people in the world. The guy he describes as a spy chief of China is one of the most crooked people in the world. The wife of the mayor of Moscow, sure as hell, is one of the most crooked people in Russia, one of Putin's best friends. And what about his partner, the nephew of Whitey Bulger? You never write about that. Even the Fox doesn't tell you that Whitey Bulger's nephew was his partner. Nor did they tell you about, oh gosh, I used to have it right here. I don't have it with me. Nor did they tell you about the text that you got to memorize, because the crooked press will keep it from you, because there's no question that all the money went up to Joe Biden. It's been answered already. Why we're going to have an investigation to go get something that's been admitted in black and white by his co-conspirator is kind of ridiculous. Everybody wants to know, did Joe Biden get the money? You know who is giving you that answer? I put it out within 4 days of having the hard drive. Hunter Biden answers that for you in a text to his daughter at Christmas time 4 years ago. And he writes, I may have it quoted tomorrow night. I'll show it to you right out of the hard drive. Okay. But what it says is they don't really appreciate me. For 30 years, I've paid all the expenses for the family. And even with that, Pop requires me to give him half of my salary. Now, when you combine that with everything else, when you combine what the money is for, when you combine it with the fact that a crooked Ukrainian oligarch, a very, very wily Russian woman who's the richest woman in Russia, the spy chief of China, they're not going to be paying 10 million, 20 million, 30 million to Hunter Biden. Now, this money, we know it goes to the family. This isn't the Ford family. They don't make cars. So let's kind of reason together. Let's think. Let's think. What is it that would be worth 30, 40 million from China that the Biden family has that can be sold. Joe Biden's influence. What was Loshevsky buying? He was buying Joe Biden's influence so he could preserve his $40 billion company. Now, that is exactly what it means when Hunter says, I had to give half of what I earned to Pop because the money really was for Pop. It ties the ribbon on the RICO case like this, right around his neck. So, you want justice? Here's justice. Joe should be in a nursing home, except it should be under the jurisdiction of the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
So, Mayor, that hour just flew by. It's 9.
Well, I hope it was useful. We tried to give people the information that they don't get a lot of other places, or at least not as straight as they get it here. And I hope you come back tomorrow, and I hope you stay tuned to WABCradio.com tomorrow. Dr. Maria will be there. If I get finished early, I'll be there too. But she can sure handle it. She's a genius. And she's on top of everything. And we'll be back tomorrow night. And we'll have plenty more for you. I mean, this is a lot of things are coming out right now. And you got to stay on top of it so it doesn't get buried. Because, look, the people who want to destroy our country and our way of life want to bury it. And don't forget the guy behind a lot of this, Soros, who's paying everybody here. He's paying Biden. He's paying Black Lives Matter. He's paying Antifa. He's paying all the crooked DAs, the 40 of them that are creating crime waves all throughout America and getting people killed. And along with his friend Klaus Schwab, he's moving us to destroying America and becoming part of one world. Don't forget, this is coordinated. This is not by accident. God bless America.